Hello and welcome to Colred Plays Raid Shadow Legends. I am Colred. Thank you for joining me. So I have done guides on all of the Doom Tower bosses except for one. So in today's video, I'm going to cover that final boss, and that is Kuldath the Magma Dragon. It's kind of funny because he's probably the easiest boss in all of Doom Tower, but that doesn't mean he doesn't deserve a guide. And so today we're going to complete the set. I hope you're ready for it. Let's get started. Just a quick reminder, I do live stream every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Thursday's tomorrow, and I will be going live at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Now, I have launched a second channel. It's called Colred Plays. There's no game attached to that because we're playing a bunch of different games. Right now, we're playing Pal World. You can find a link to that channel on the main YouTube page of this channel. You'll see there's a nice big white circle with the Colred Plays logo on it. And that is actually my second channel. So if you're interested in seeing some Pal World content or just some content on other games other than Raid Shadow Legends, you should come check it out. As always, don't forget to hit the like button for this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and consider joining our Discord community. All right, thanks so much. Now let's get to Kuldath. Okay, like I always do, I like to come here to the Raid Shadow Legends stages tool from hellhades.com. and check out the stats for any fight that I'm going to do. I use this tool nearly every day. So the great thing about this tool is it'll give you the stats not only for the boss, but for the waves. So you can check the waves here. You can see what mobs you're going to be coming up against. Mobs. And what enemies. You're also going to have the boss stats right there. So as you can see, this is for stage 20, stage 20 of rotation number 2. And you can see the boss is Force Affinity. In rotation 1, Kuldath is also in that rotation. And I believe he's Magic Affinity there. And I think he's the very first boss. So he would be stage 10. So if you are new to the game and you're just trying to get past these first early bosses in Doom Tower Normal, you want to come here, check the stats, and this is going to help you know what to expect. As you can see here, the boss has a resistance of 50, and you need an accuracy of 75 in order to overcome that resistance. Likewise, the boss has an accuracy of 50, and you need 155 resistance to be able to resist any resistible debuffs that the boss may place. Another good stat to always check is the speed. 120 speed, you want to be running faster than that. But again, you can lap this boss, and generally you want to go as fast as you can against Kuldath. So, if you could get 240 speed, that'd be great. But obviously early in the game, as long as you're running somewhere maybe around 150, 160, you're going to have a shot at this without too much difficulty. Okay, so as I do in all my Doom Tower boss guides, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take on the lowest level of normal Doom Tower that has this boss. So in this case, it is floor 20 for Kuldath. Now we go in here to the boss guide, and we're going to go ahead and read through the fight. So the A1 is Brand with Weakness. It attacks one enemy. It does decrease the target's turn meter by 50%. That's significant. It also will target enemies under hex debuffs. That is also significant. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Now the A2 is an AoE that instantly activates any HP burn debuffs on each target and decreases the duration of those HP burn debuffs by 1 turn. That basically means it just activates them. When you activate them, they have a duration decrease. So this is not an additional duration decrease. A3 is another AoE, places an HP burn debuff for 3 turns on all enemies and steals 10% of the turn meter from each enemy under HP burn debuffs. Also places a hex debuff for 4 turns on the enemy with the lowest HP. This debuff cannot be resisted or blocked. I do believe that the HP burns can be resisted, and it's not a bad idea to do so. You can also use a cleanser, but a cleanser is tricky, and that's because of this first passive. So Lethal Lava instantly places a hex debuff for 4 turns on an enemy whenever they remove a hex debuff from themselves or an ally. It means you literally can't get rid of hexes, right? You can move them around. You can move them from somebody else to your cleanser, but then they will stay on your cleanser basically permanently, right? Because if the cleanser cleanses themselves, it replaces the hex. So it doesn't mean you don't want to bring a cleanser, but it does mean that the person who has the hex will be the target of the A1, right? So your cleanser is going to get hit a lot if you bring a cleanser. So you want a very tanky cleanser. Now, Lethal Lava also says this will ignore block damage, shield, and unkillable buffs, and will ignore 100% of the defense when attacking enemies under Hex debuffs. Instantly removes any HP burn debuffs placed on Kuldath and replaces them with a 15% continuous heal for 2 turns. All right, so there are 2 pieces of this. The first is that tanky cleanser, you need to be tanky through HP because 100% of the defense gets ignored. So big HP pool, the actual defense number is not going to matter that much. So HP percentage chest, HP percentage gloves, and that should hopefully be enough. Down at this level here where we're on just floor 20, your stat like requirement is not going to be that high. Not going to be that high, but we'll work through it when we put together a team. Okay, as far as instantly removing any HP burn debuffs placed on Kuldath the Magma Dragon, the big thing here is that this replaces them with continuous heals. It doesn't mean you can't bring HP burns, but you probably don't want to. So if you do bring HP burns, you're going to want a block debuffs buff on the boss, and that way at least he won't get continuous heals. Your HP burns aren't going to do any damage, but maybe you only have 5 good champions and one of them brings an HP burn, and you don't really have a substitute for that champion. If you have a block debuffs buff on the boss, then you don't have to worry about the continuous heals. The boss is immune to almost everything, but you could also bring, I think you can actually bring a heal reduction as well. So that would work as well. So either a heal reduction or a block debuffs if you're going to bring an HP burn, or just don't bring the HP burn. Now, Invincible Scales tells you that basically the boss is immune to all the stuff that bosses are typically immune to, but there are 2 additions here that you need to worry about. One is you can't use decreased speed. Doesn't help. Decreased speed is something that the boss is immune to. Likewise, turn meter reduction effects don't help. Boss is immune. So the turn meter reduction and decreased speed combo that you might use for other bosses in Doom Tower will not work here. Now, there is one other really special mechanic, which is that this boss, unlike the vast majority of bosses in the game, is actually susceptible to provokes. So if you can provoke this boss, the boss will not use any of its skills. This is by far the easiest way to beat the boss, but you may not have a provoke champion. If you do, you want to consider affinity. Remember that the current affinity, Kuldath, is force affinity, and so if you're bringing a magic affinity provoker, you're going to weak hit sometimes. You do want your provoker also to be relatively tanky, and you're going to need some sustain, maybe even a revive to keep them alive. Okay, so that is it for the fight. It's relatively straightforward. What we're going to do first is here at floor 20, I'm going to build a team with no provoker. It's actually significantly harder without a provoker, but I think most players don't build a provoker in their first 5 or 6 champions. So I'm going to go ahead and try to clear this stage, which is only stage 20 normal, without a provoker. I'm also going to do something else, which is that I'm going to try to bring as few 60s as I can. So I'm going to bring 2 60s, I think, and the rest are going to be 50s. We're going to see if that works. So I'm just going to build a little team here. And the first thing that I'm going to do is, because it is a force affinity boss, I'm going to try to stick with spirit affinity champions as much as possible. That means they'll take less damage and do more damage. So let's do that. And the other thing is I'm going to try to stick with some 5 stars for the most part. Now I do need a reviver, so probably bring in Melga here. She's a pretty good reviver. My Melga is completely unbooked. She doesn't have masteries. I think she maybe has 1 book. We can take a look at these champions, but in general, all of these champions are going to be relatively weakly built, at least for this account. Let's go ahead and build Ornn, or bring in Ornn as a damage dealer. He's pretty solid. He's a nice tanky damage dealer. He's a poisoner. He's got some of his own sustain. I do believe he's booked, but he has no mastery. Okay, and finally, I thought I had a 5-star Haikatoon, but I don't. So we're going to bring in a 6-star Haikatoon as our speed lead. Everybody gets her at 30 days. So hopefully you could probably run her at 50. She'll be fine, but hopefully you have her, and she's going to help you here. Okay, so now I'm going to bring in 2 other champions. One, I'm going to bring in a starter champion because everybody's going to be running this with a starter champion. And my starter champion will be level 60 because yours should be too. You should get your starter champion to 60 as soon as possible. Unfortunately, my starter champions are all built with, blessings and stuff. But we'll go here with Athel just because I like her. But, you could bring in Elhain. You could bring in any of the starter champions. But so let's go ahead and bring in Athel. And then honestly, this could be really good work. You know, we could do this. We could bring in Apothecary that would be additional sustain. I do want additional sustain, but I think I want a cleanse. So I'm going to bring in a cleanse here, and we're going to go with a relatively tanky cleanser. There we go. We're going to bring in Doom Priest. So she does have a 5-star blessing. I haven't chosen the blessing. She doesn't. I don't think she has a blessing yet. I mean, so she has 5 stars of awakening, but she doesn't even have the extra stats yet. I don't think so anyway. If she does, it's probably Miracle Heal or whatever. But okay, so this is what we're going to go with. And remember that you have to clear the waves, and then you have to get through the boss. Athel's going to do most of the wave clearing. She is weak affinity, but that's just the reality of the situation for this rotation. If you're bringing your starter champion, they're going to be weak affinity. So let's go ahead and just fire this up, and we'll see how it goes. All right. So, yep, we're nuking out the waves pretty easily here. Now, my Athel is built pretty well, but she's not actually in lifesteal anymore. So your starter champion is likely to be in lifesteal and is more likely to survive than my Athel. I think my Athel is actually in a stun set for like secret rooms and stuff. But you can see she's going to do the majority of the damage, even though she's weak affinity. And we're going to cruise through this really quickly. So maybe I should have even brought any 60s. Maybe I should have brought all 50s. But the point is, at this particular level, you're going to be fine. You're going to have more damage than the boss, basically. You're going to out-damage the boss. So a team like this can work, but any team really can work probably at floor 20. If you have 5 level 50 champions, you're probably fine. You might even be able to run this with some level 40 champions, as long as they're relatively tanky, or if you have, you know, like a 60, if you have Athel, she might even be able to solo it. That might be something where you just have to get her to the boss, and she's going to be able to solo it if she's in lifesteal gear. So relatively easy fight. Again, you don't need Provoke. You've probably heard, you know, oh, just provoke the Magma Dragon and you're fine. You don't need Provoke at floor 20 of normal. You probably won't need Provoke for a little while, depending on how well your team scales versus the Doom Tower, right? So if you're really OP like I am here at floor 20, I could probably run this all the way up through normal Doom Tower without a Provoke at any time. However, once you get up into hard Doom Tower, you're really going to want to provoke that boss because it starts to hit extremely hard. So let's go ahead and take a look at the top floor, the highest floor where Kuldath spawns. Okay, so again, I want to check the stats before I actually start building a team. So we're just going to flip this over to hard difficulty, and then the boss goes on floor 100, I believe. Stage 100. Yep, Kuldath, right there. Okay. So the speed, the resistance is 330, which means you need 355 accuracy. Now that's going to matter because we're bringing in provokers in order to handle this boss. We don't really need resistance here because if we provoke the boss, we're not going to have to worry about resistance, although you could potentially try to resist. I think the Hex might be resistible, but no, the Hex is not resistible. What's the resistible one? The HP burns. You could resist the HP burns. But in this case, we're just going to go ahead and kind of tank our way through it. So a resistance of 355 is not really necessary. Could be great, though. But we're going to go ahead and get that accuracy that we need, at least on our provoker. What I would highly suggest is bringing 2 provokers. And you still want a cleanser. You still want a cleanser because if the Hex goes onto the cleanser and your cleanser isn't your provoker and your provoker is the one that's getting hit, then the boss doesn't ignore the defense of the provoker. That's really important. If the provoker has the Hex on them, the provoker is going to die. So you want to make sure that you have a cleanser. You probably still want a reviver. And then you're going to want at least one hard-hitting champion. Remember, you have to get through the waves as well. Okay, so let's go back to the game and check out who we can build for this. Okay, so here we are on floor 100 Magma Dragon, and I'm just going to take this team away. I must have used that team at some point. But okay, let's think about this again. We want to use as many Spirit Affinity champions on this rotation as possible, and we do need a Provoke. So let's go ahead and look for a Spirit champion, and the debuff we want is a Provoke. And so we have some options here. Oh, we've got our new Archer champion. Right, she's awesome. She's fantastic. I forgot that I forgot. I just literally built her yesterday, and I already forgot that she would be available to me. So there's also Bivold of the Thorn, fantastic champion, great provoker. it's really good to have a provoke on an A1. So that's something that you can do. But let's pull out Bible of the Thorn. We're going to use Archer here for this. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to actually look at the 2 neutral affinities as well to see if I have anybody who's got an A1 provoke that I could use just as a backup. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and use Husk. Okay, so Husk does have an A1 provoke. I think it's about a 50% chance. So that'll be a backup. And he's a nice, hard-hitting HP-based nuker. So we're going to use these 2 champions. Now, I do want a cleanser. So let's go ahead and look for somebody who's got a cleanse. I've got plenty of cleansers, but let's use somebody fun. Okay, so we have some good options here. I think I'm going to stick with Pythion. Pythion's going to give me a revive, as well as a block debuffs buff and some heals. So he's going to give us a lot of sustain. He's going to be our cleanser. He's going to be our cleanser, and he's tanky. He's fairly tanky, so he should survive. I could also put him in the lead and make him ally resistance in all battles by 60. That might help me resist some of the skills of the boss, but I honestly don't think I need it. I don't think I need it. So now we're going to be talking about, we want speed and we want damage. Okay, so let's look at our damage dealers here. Do we have anybody in these affinities? We're going to be avoiding magic affinity. Who's a really good damage dealer here? Oh, of course, Newt. Of course, it's got to be Newt. It's got to be Newt. Who else would it be? We're not bringing in an HP burner, although, you know, Nishak Verminlord would do a great job as well. So we could use him, but I'm going to stick with Newt because that's going to make it a little bit faster. And then what we need is we need a speed aura and maybe some turn meter fill, maybe a speed boost. So what we'll probably do here for this, I was going to say we could go into our magic affinity bag because we've got some good speed boosts over there, but maybe we just stick with that. Give us a decreased defense and a leech. Turn meter fill. That feels good. That feels good. All right, so let's go ahead and run this and see how it looks. I'm not going to bother with the AI because we should crush this boss pretty easily, but I may manual the first turn just to make sure I get the provokes going the way we want once we hit the boss. Now, if you don't have the champion roster that I have or the gear that I have, don't worry about it. You still basically build the team the same way, right? You want some sustain, you want a cleanser, you want a reviver, you want 2 provokers, and you want some damage, and you want to try to avoid magic affinity as much as possible in this rotation. And then in the next rotation that Kuldath pops up, I think Kuldath is magic affinity, so you want to avoid spirit affinity. And you can see I have 3 spirit affinity champions here, so these would come out. But Husk and Pythion could probably stay through both rotations. You could also go for faster wave clear here. You know, if you're pretty OP, there are some great teams that would clear waves here very quickly. Could actually do some decent damage to the boss as well. Poisons are totally fine against this boss. Remember that this boss doesn't get turn meter controlled, so poisons would actually tick. So you can use poison explosion. You can use just regular poison. So let's get the decreased defense out there. Get the increased accuracy for her. Oh, let's see how hard he hits. Okay, so he hits decently hard already. We landed our provoke, and now you can see how hard Kuldath hits. Right, that's Husk. Husk is running something like 60 or 70,000 HP, and he just got one shot by that boss. So we're going to revive him, bring him back. And then what we want to do is we want to get the provoke out there. Okay. Now, Archer could potentially be dead as well. She is a defensive-based champion. She doesn't have a lot of HP on her, so she might get one shot. Not without the Hex, right? Without the Hex, she'll be fine. But if the Hex lands on her, then it's going to be problematic. So we want to save the cleanse for when the Hex comes out. Could actually just run it on auto here and see what happens. See, so she was fine there because there was no Hex on her. So as long as she doesn't have a Hex on her, she should be fine. And we'll just wait for Newt to come back around, and this should be over. We're pretty close to it. There we go. Now we can just work our way through the bosses a little bit. Couple more hits. We do have 2 damage dealers, but, you know, Husk basically has 1 hard-hitting skill. There's the Hex that just came out again, but it's over. And there you go. So that was 2 minutes, 39 seconds, 82 turns with me kind of manualing some of it. So, you know, you could probably clear this in under 2 minutes. My best looks like 2:03, 58 turns, but I haven't like updated this team in forever because this boss really is manageable with that provoke technique. You can even use weak affinity provokers if you kind of have 2 of them. You have backups. Maybe you put 1 in affinity breaker. But in general, you know, it's better to have at least neutral affinity provokers, if not strong affinity provokers. And strong affinity champions are just more likely to survive the nuke that the Magma Dragon puts out. He hits extremely hard. He hits extremely hard. So you either need that provoke or you need some other way to maintain your team. You could go with a really tanky team with, say, shields, high HP, and revivers. You don't actually absolutely have to have a provoke. So you can use that same strategy here at floor 100 in hard that we were using on floor 20 in normal, which is, you know, bring damage and then otherwise just try to tank it up with a cleanser, a very tanky cleanser, and some revives. Okay, so relatively easy guide today. If you have any questions about the fight, please put them in the comments below. Also, let me know your favorite composition for the Magma Dragon. Maybe you have something that can clear this in like 45 seconds. Let me know about it, because I'd love to speed this run up. I don't farm this boss at all. I just like to get through it as quickly as possible. All right, that is it for me today. Thank you so much for hanging out. I have been Colred, and I will see you in another video soon.